All right, we have multiple pressing stories to get to. Stories that include new footage, breaking footage going viral right now of the sitting president of the United States stumbling and wandering apparently off into the Amazon jungle. This footage has renewed calls from Democrats even questioning Biden's senility. Is he competent enough to be commander in chief for the next 6 weeks? This coming as the same president, Joe Biden, authorizes one of the most dangerous and provocative escalations yet in the Ukraine-Russia war last night, authorizing Ukraine to strike deep inside Russia with long-range U.S. missiles. Something the U.S. hasn't done in nearly 4 years, the entire length of Biden's presidency and the length of this war, 3 to 4 years. He's resisted authorizing this. So wait until you hear why he hasn't done so. And why then would he do it now? We have the details. Also, MSNBC's Morning Joe show meets with Donald Trump this weekend. Went down to Mar-a-Lago. Wait till you hear their explanation to their audience for why they decided to meet with evil incarnate, meeting with Hitler Jr. himself. This is great. And more stories from around the country. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates.
President Joe Biden reversing a long-standing U.S. policy involving the war in Ukraine. Biden now going to allow Ukrainian forces to use long-range U.S. weapons inside of Russia for the very first time. CNN's Kevin Liptak is traveling with the president in Brazil. Kevin, what more are you learning?
Yeah, this is a major change in American policy, and it comes at a critical point in the war in Ukraine as Russian forces mass in the city and around the city of Kursk as they prepare for an offensive there, and as North Korea has sent thousands of its troops to fight alongside Russia in that conflict. President Biden making this decision to allow Ukraine to fire the American ATACMS missiles inside Russia for the first time.
President Biden just authorized Ukraine to use U.S.-made long-range missiles to strike deep inside Russia. This decision coming with Joe Biden having just 2 months left in office. President Putin of Russia saying in September, and I quote, "If Ukraine uses U.S. long-range missiles to strike Russia, the United States is at war with Russia," unquote. So what the hell is the Biden administration doing? What are they thinking? Here's what CNN and the media won't tell you about this. The reason the Biden administration hasn't authorized this before, it's been 3 years. There's been debate about it, but they haven't done it. Why haven't they done it? Because Ukrainian soldiers aren't able to operate this equipment. Ukraine doesn't have the capability. Point blank, they aren't able to fire these precision-guided missiles. It's only possible with the use of NATO or U.S. satellite intelligence. They literally can't operate them. So in order to program these strikes, someone in NATO or a U.S. service person will be the one actually typing in the codes, programming these missiles where to go, which means what? It means we're not just supporting the Ukrainians, sending them money and weapons. It means the United States is actually firing its own U.S. weapons inside Russian territory. It means we're at war with the state of Russia. Here's Vladimir Putin explaining what would happen should the U.S. go forward with this policy. Roll the tape, Kimmy.
Это возможно только с использованием разведданных со спутников, которыми Украина не располагает. Это данные только со спутников или Евросоюза, либо Соединенных Штатов, в общем, с натовских спутников. Это первое. Второе, и очень важное, может быть, ключевое, заключается в том, что полетные задания в эти ракетные системы могут, по сути, вносить только военнослужащие стран НАТО. Украинские военнослужащие делать этого не могут. И поэтому речь идет не о том, чтобы разрешать украинскому режиму наносить удары по России этим оружием или не разрешать. Речь идет о том, чтобы принять решение о том, что страны НАТО напрямую участвуют в военном конфликте или нет. Если это решение будет принято, это будет означать не что иное, как прямое участие стран НАТО, Соединенных Штатов, европейских стран в войне на Украине. Это их прямое участие. И это уже, конечно, существенным образом меняет саму суть, саму природу конфликта. Это будет означать, что страны НАТО, США, европейские страны воюют с Россией. А если это так, то, имея в виду изменение самой сути этого конфликта, мы будем принимать соответствующие решения, исходя из тех угроз, которые нам...
Here's Thomas Massie, probably one of the best congressmen on the Hill right now, posting on X this morning, by authorizing long-range missiles to strike inside Russia, Biden's committing an unconstitutional act of war that endangers the lives of all U.S. citizens. This is an impeachable offense, he says, but the reality is he's an emasculated puppet of a deep state. This comes after Secretary of State Blinken said just last week that the Biden administration will be expediting all military aid and monies, all $6 billion that's left that Congress earmarked for Ukraine, saying they're going to send it all immediately. Doing this obviously to poke Donald Trump in the eye. And both of these moves are to try to front run any diplomatic and foreign policy maneuvers that the Trump administration, the Trump team is working on right now behind the scenes.
Working to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs to effectively defend itself. The United States continues to step up. We've obligated just recently and pushed out the door another $8 billion in security assistance for Ukraine. That was in September. Another almost $500 million just a few weeks ago. And President Biden is committed to making sure that every dollar we have at our disposal will be pushed out the door between now and January 20th.
But here's the thing. I actually don't think this is going to hurt Trump's negotiating ability. If anything, it should technically help him out to get a faster deal with Putin. It gives him more leverage, right? Putin doesn't want Ukraine to have this capability, to be able to strike deep inside Russia, to be able to hit Moscow, which these ATACMS systems can technically do. And look, this story, this situation coming from the same person, the same president who was just caught live on camera yesterday, Joe Biden wandering off into the Amazon in Brazil after taking questions from the podium. This footage going viral now. The Daily Mail saying this, footage of Biden wandering off into the Amazon explodes online as social media commentators claim 81-year-old president is senile. Now, this footage and title aren't exactly what they seem to be. If you really watch the full clip, he turns around and kind of walks down a path, not going off trail, not just, wandering off into the jungle. But even so, we've seen other clips just last week of Joe clearly having a hard time staying on his feet. This was him just last week trying to walk on his Delaware beach. The First Lady seems to be walking with no problem, but Joe is clearly having problems. And this clip from yesterday causing a ruckus online. People do not have confidence in their president. In another story, the morning hosts over at MSNBC, Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough, the hosts of Morning Joe, opened their show this morning with a shocking admission, telling their audience that they both flew down to Mar-a-Lago on Friday to meet with the president-elect, the same person they've been calling a fascist, evil incarnate, the next Hitler, essentially groveling to Donald Trump last week, begging him to let them get back in the fold. And we're going to show the clip in a minute because you could see the embarrassment come through on their faces as they tell their audience this, that yes, we're sorry, audience, but for the last 8 years, we've been lying to you. It turns out we don't really think Trump is such a bad guy. He's not really Hitler. It was all just politics. It's what we were told to say. It's the memo we got every single day from the DNC or whoever sends those talking points out. And now admitting it was a mistake to do that. Here's the clip. Watch for yourself.
Over the past week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens, deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections, and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania.
And look, this really shocked the Morning Joe viewership. Reports coming in that MSNBC Studios was being blasted with angry phone calls this morning, wondering why would Joe and Mika meet with Hitler 2.0? I mean, this audience really believes it. They've been indoctrinated for years. Years of demoralizing Donald Trump, dehumanizing him. Here's some of the crazy language that they've used just recently when talking about our next president. Roll the tape.
That is most critical of him should be taken off the air. This is not a reach. I could go back and talk about Nazi Germany, and I do it without any concerns whatsoever. And if people can't start drawing the parallels, well, you're just stupid, or you have your head in the sand, or you're one of them. Hypocrisy, Mika, over a misstatement by Joe Biden, which he quickly corrected, is so laughable, because this guy does this every day. And then you turn on Fox News and say, oh, how could anybody do this? I've never seen this before from a president. Despite the fact, one of the people saying that yesterday on Fox News stood by while Donald Trump watched violence erupt on January the 6th and kept allowing violence to erupt on January the 6th and said the people that were beating the hell out of cops were patriots. So yes.
In another story, we're learning more details now as to how far the Department of Government Efficiency is really planning on going to shrink the size of government. Vivek Ramaswamy this weekend telling Fox Business that yes, entire departments will soon cease to exist. Roll the tape.
Are you expecting to close down entire agencies like President Trump has talked about the Department of Education, for example? Are you going to be closing down departments?
We expect mass reductions. We expect certain agencies to be deleted outright. We expect mass reductions in force in areas of the federal government that are bloated. We expect massive cuts among federal contractors and others who are overbilling the federal government. So, yes, we expect all of the above. And I think people will be surprised by, how quickly we're able to move with some of those changes, given the legal backdrop the Supreme Court has given us.